All right, so we're going to be increasing or decreasing a quantity, which means an amount, by a given percentage. So suppose we have something like this. So suppose I've got the problem increase some amount, $520 by 30%. What you can do is you can find 30% of 520 and then add that on to 520. So I can go 30% of 520 means percent means out of 100, and in this case of means times. And so what the value is I get for this, I'll tack it on to 520. As a decimal, 30% is 0.30 times 520. I get, this is 156, I think. And then what I do is that's the 30% of 520, and the increase means add. Increase means added on to the original amount. Okay, so 30% increase of 520 gives me $676. Kind of the long way around it. So another way to think of these problems is to just make it a bit simpler and just to know what an increase of 30% means. An increase of 30%. And this way is a little bit easier if I explain this okay. An increase of 30% means I take the original amount, all of it, and another value for all is 100%, and I'm going to add 30% to that. So an increase of 30% means 100% plus 30%. And add those two up, and that's 130%. And as a decimal, remember how I change a percent to a decimal is just to divide by 100, and hopefully we can do this in our head. Divide by 100 is 1.3. Now this number right here I'm going to call the multiplier. 1.3 represents an increase of 30%. So instead of doing all this and adding, I can just take the original amount, 520, and multiply it by this multiplier amount right there, 1.3. And I'll get $676. So today, I mean, you can go this way every time, find the percent of a number and add it on, or you can take the original amount and multiply it by this multiplier. And you get a lot, same answer, shorter time. For the next example, instead of finding 2.5% of 1,605 and adding that on, just give me the, work out what the multiplier is. An increase of 2.5%, what does that mean? It means all of it plus 2.5%. So an increase of 2.5% means 102.5%. And we find the decimal equivalent of that percent, which is always divided by 100, and we get 1.025. So eventually you can either work this multiplier out, or you can just do it in your head. Okay, I don't really want too much time spent on that working. So to solve this, we just take the original amount and multiply it by the new multiplier there. And I get 1,645. I didn't 0.125 grams. I didn't do any rounding there. I just wrote the whole thing in full. It might make more sense to round that to 1 or 2 decimal places. Okay, let's get a bigger percent increase. We can increase things by more than 100%. No problem. That just means it's more than doubled. So an increase of 210%. What does that mean? Well, the original is still 100%. It always will. And we're adding on 210%. So that's a whopping 310%. Change that to a decimal, which means divide by 100. And 3.1 is my multiplier. So original amount, 7.2 times 3.1 is increasing it by 210%. So what about decrease? What about decrease? The long way of doing it is to find 12% of 720 and subtract it from 720. So I could find 12% of 720. Work that out. 12% of the decimal is 0.12. Multiply that. I get $86.40. That's what 12% is. And I take that away from 720. And I get $633.60. And usually in math, not always, but the best method is the one that has the fewest steps. Okay, so similar to what we did earlier, what does a 12% decrease mean? It means we've taken all of it, 100%, and we're taking away 12%. So if I start with 100% and I'm decreasing something by 12%, that means I have 88%. And 88% as a decimal, don't forget, means divide by 100, is 0.88. That is our multiplier. Notice our multiplier looks a lot different than the percent increase ones. The percent increase for 1 point something or the 3 point something for the 200% increase. But these look different because we're taking them away from 100%. So if I wanted to do this the quick way, I could take the original amount, 720, and multiply it by my new multiplier, 0.88, and I'll get that value there. Now that to me is a little bit more simpler. Okay, didn't like my use of more simpler, so easier instead of more simpler. So when we do these, let's try doing it this way from now on with the multiplier instead of this way, because it's just fewer steps. So decreasing it by 7.5%. What does a decrease of 7.5% mean? Means 100% minus 7.5%. What does that give me? 92.5%. Change that to a decimal by dividing by 100. Okay, so this is the money number. This is the one we want. When we take our original amount and multiply it by 0.925, we cut to the chase. And when I multiply those out, talking about money here, and what I get on the calculator is 536.5. But if I'm dealing with money, I want 2 decimal places, not just 1. So that's a 0. Okay, so that's it for now. And let's do some examples. So try these 8, pause it, and see if you can get some answers. Again, yellow highlight the answers, orange highlight are the multiplier numbers that you should have multiplied the original amount by. How'd you do?